Armchair Generals. This is Gamer 1745 here. And I'm just going to check and make sure things are streaming well on all of the systems. No, need to shift. Yep, that's looking good. Things are looking good. Right. Yes. All right. Okay. That is good. Things are working. Well, let's make some episodes. And hello, Arno, my friend. Good to have you here. Welcome, fellow Armchair Generals. This is, of course, Gamer 1745 here, and we're playing Strategic Command World War I, and specifically, let's find it here, the save. Note to developers, yes, autosave is here, nice, up front, but do everything else in reverse order. Somehow figure this out, because we're mostly going to get the most recent one if we're doing any of this stuff. Yes, and we're playing March on Paris, but this time we are playing as the French, or the Entente. So, here we are. We are continuing. We can pull out here to give an idea. Now, I've played this as the Germans. It was tough. So far, things are reasonably easy playing as the Entente. I don't know if how well it's optimized, if you will, for playing. Now, I have thought about trying to do force marches just right now, and I'm not, because I don't think I need to. And hello over on YouTube as well, Arno. Okay. Right. Now, so, they pushed through Liège very quickly. I hadn't planned on holding at Liège. I had planned to delay longer, but we're doing pretty well. So, what... I'm wondering here. Okay. Likely could be worse, could theoretically be better, but likely a 1 to 4. That seems like a good trade. One to 3. I'm going to retreat him back there. I'm going to bring him up here. Not so great. Okay. I was worried about weakening him a little too much here. I think we'll move you up to here and entrench. Yeah, that looks like a good entrenchment pattern there. Lots of entrenchment, but don't know a good reason why not move up and create a straight line here. There may be one, but I don't know it. Entrenched. Okay, the force unit. I think we're going to move him this way. Let's think about that for a moment. That looks like a good attack. Start. Good. Took a bit of a hit, but we'll retire back into our trenches. Now here. He fell back. We're going to fall back. Oh, maybe we shouldn't have. Not sure. Yes, we are pushing the Hun back here. Only going to push. Wow, that's... They've already attacked, so they can't attack. Okay. See that they're not entrenched. But that's sort of handles that for this turn. I mean, they may move in more forces, but we're making them pay a bit here. Now we are woefully undefended down there, but hopefully they don't know that. We used him a little better. I don't want to lose the Brussels hex at all, so I'm not going to attack out of it. Okay, now come back over here. No troops in Britain to get out. I don't think we have the ability to buy any more units. Okay, so the ones that are back here are moving up. What we need to see about doing here is okay, we'll over get those on the front line reinforced. be reinforced. Good. All right. We can move up and entrench. Weak spot there, but not a good supply corridor coming through if they push. Yeah, I think that's pretty good. Uh-oh, rain. That's going to help us slow up the Germans. Or mud, I should say. Okay, French, du Fauche. Okay, well, it needs to show up in France. HQ's there. We don't have an HQ down here, so yeah, we can put him here. Okay, a detachment. And some Belgian cavalry. All right, well. I'm going to put you up here just to sort of threaten the flanks of the Hun. I want to think about that up there for a moment. That's space in the line. Gotta remember to use my Air Force more. That's what it's there for, to be used. Okay. And I think we should put that in the trench. All right, it's a bit of a weak spot there, but I think we're okay. At least I hope so. Well, so far, this is becoming rather easy. And for some reason, I don't think I'm some brilliant. He's already attacked. Yeah, I don't want to weaken this front, because he can be attacked from a lot of places. And he probably won't be able to retreat. Oh, well. He'll come in and fill the gap. Right. Okay, all of these forces here. These are detachments. I'm making sure I'm moving divisions first so that they have priority. Well, let's. These guys going a little more north. These secondary areas. Move on the mountain tops. All right, well. After them hitting so hard at Liège, coming in there, I just not sure. I'm just waiting for the other shoe to drop, and we're going to get hammered hard, or has the offensive already stalled out? I know when I was coming through and playing this, very much had to pay attention to the rail line. So getting up here was more of a up in Antwerp to secure the flank, because really the rail lines come through Brussels, as you can see here. If we take away the units. Yeah, because they're got to come back down here. Otherwise, they go up to the Netherlands, and that doesn't help me. So that's just a play versus the flank. So you really got to take Brussels, and you really got to come through here, if you will, or coming through Belgium, or you're going to try to come, through, south of the Ardennes, or just a bit north around it. So we've got to see here what's going on, what the AI is doing or thinking it's doing. Well, it's being aggressive there. If the AI is not just wastefully aggressive, meaning just attacking units and not achieving any result from it, changing the battlefield really, even if it's favorable exchange rates, it doesn't necessarily mean you're winning. We're going to have to see if we can hold Nancy there, though. Right up there. Okay, Hindenburg defeats the Russians at Tannenberg. Those are Russian soldiers there, mostly. That's a German, that's a German, that's a German. But most of those are Russian. Okay. And that really does affect what's going on here in the West. Might not be immediate effect, but the idea that Germany isn't overly worried about the Eastern Front does affect things. Okay. We got that unit there. We have Toul as the main fort to hold. But I would like to hold Nancy. I think Nancy is holdable right now. Okay, these guys can move right in here. And now they are weaker, but they are entrenched, so that I think will matter. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to swap these two out. Yep, stronger line there. We're going to just make sure nobody gets in there. Okay, Arnold will be back. And hello, General Scarrow. How you doing? Trying to think. You get reinforced. You attack it. You swap it out. No, undo. swap out with these guys. You guys come into the woods. Hey, Gemnuska. How would you rate the AI at this game overall? Reasonably good. It definitely has goals. I'm right now more worried about how aggressive the AI is going to be. When it came and hit Liège, it just pounded right on through very efficiently, very effectively. Just took it out. I'd like to play more against humans, but I don't know. I just don't organize that up well, I guess, would maybe be. Right now, I'll say this. I don't feel challenged right now. Now, maybe maybe this is just filled with units in here and I'm going to get hammer blowed and push through. But it doesn't seem to be. Now, I don't know. It didn't, in reading about this scenario, it didn't specifically say that it need to be played as Germany. Now, I have played the scenario as Germany, and it was a challenge to win this scenario. It was not easy. And I have this on sort of standard difficulty. I hope to play these scenarios as close to historically as possible, is in forces. I don't know of an AI that, or of a game that uses AI levels, of smartness as the challenge. Mostly it's either giving advantages to one side or disadvantages to one side, meaning as in like readiness or morale or whatever, or more units or more MPP or some sort of combination of that. Not like, oh, hey, we've got dumb AI, okay AI, smart AI. I've yet to see a game that has the challenge being in the AI department. And yes, good to hear, General Scaro, and I'm doing well. I don't see too many dumb moves with this game and the AI. Because coming through here in the Ardennes is really stupid because you have roads, you have no this is a railway through here. So we're not seeing, they haven't even bothered to take all of this part of Belgium here. Whether I should move up or not, maybe. So I'm not, Now, it's a lot easier to program an AI like this than something highly dynamic like Hearts of Iron. Okay, glad that answer is helpful. Get through the swamps. So particularly when I've played the game as clearly the challenge, and I love, quite honestly, I love this scale of this game in which either daily turns or turns that are every like 2 days or something like that on the calendar. And this is a divisional scale game, and World War I is sort of the pacing that I think this game matches well. I don't know that it does dynamic battlefields like World War II nearly as well. But when you're playing it, last one was the Ludendorff offensive, and I had played that once before. I won it, and it was a decisive victory. Now, I was playing it in such a way, not necessarily like historically, but I was playing it in such a way that was very grinding on the enemy, shall we say, in that sort of like I'm doing now, try to keep all my units that are on the front line entrenched, let the enemy to attack my entrenchments, or when I can get advantages, significant ones with the enemy, attack them there. And I just grinded down the French in that scenario. And it really wasn't until towards the end of the scenario's time where the French and the British, but mostly the French, were collapsing. They were just collapsing at that point. And then I won. So it needed to sort of be played. The one thing it will do, I know I'm still on the topic here, but it will do is you could easily farm destructive of units, is find a place that the AI will always move into the trap. Let's just presume here, it'll always move a division in here and you can kill it. And every turn it'll move a division in there and you can kill it. And if you just leave that trap sit there, it will constantly make that bad move. It doesn't learn, because this isn't an AI that learns anything. But also, it just, whatever programs, when you find a trap like that in its programming, it's constant repeating. Now, which I think is bad. The other thing is, now here, they don't know how weak we are. And that I've got 2 divisions here and whatnot. And I don't have the ability to strategically redeploy. So I'm incredibly weak down here. We can zoom in to get whether they can get through this fort easily or not, but we're holding Epinal super strong. One thing when in playing, the Ludendorff offensive, the other way, the French particularly put too much strength down here, while neglecting, because it's basically the same battlefield, while neglecting the front up here. Now that, you could say, is a bad, easy game, too easy a game for the AI. Yeah. That you could say down here that in the Ludendorff offensive, because they could afford, you can afford to lose a lot of this territory so long as you're holding Paris and not everywhere else strongly, right? You can give up a big chunk of this battlefield, a lot of this space down here, and fall back up to key positions as opposed to trying to hold this full steady front line, because you can see coming through the rough terrain and just hold a few selected forts. But we could also see in real life, good that you're back, Arna. In real life, you often have politicians and other sort of political or industrial concerns, like we must hold this because industrially it's important, or we must hold this politically because it's important. where it may not be important to winning or losing the battle, if you will. Okay, purchases. Okay, we can get another French division because we had the 11th destroyed. We will purchase that and nothing, and we can get more once we get more points. British. I forgot to check heavily for reinforcements. Push their way into Verdun. Not working so great. Import more Belgian detachments. No, it's just in back. Now, this was an interesting, where are we? Case we just watched right here, attacking this unit here. Okay. The AI attacked here. Obviously, they're holding the town, which is great for the railway junction there, and they want to push along it. So they attacked. This unit here did not attack. All the rest did. So the AI, I gather, evaluated its chances of winning against this unit, of exchanges, and decided it was a good time to attack. Attacked, but then stopped because presumably either this wasn't going to be a favorable exchange rate, one, or two, they did not have more divisions back here to replace. So I don't know, but it does sort of show a little bit of smartness for the AI. What we're going to do is be sort of tricky. I'm going to try to do that, fall back there, and come up there, because that will allow me to reinforce these guys here. And now we will have a fairly strong front line there. When do the British arrive in Belgium? They are already here, Arno. British here, here, and here in Brussels. We got some British here, British cavalry, British general, more British aircraft. So we've got, this whole northern flank here is Belgian. We got some French coming up here to reinforce the front line, so we'll pull him back in there. Well, oh, how close can, no, he can only get up to here. So these are proper divisions as opposed to Belgian detachments. Now that's a French detachment. So we have a Belgian-British mix here already, which gives me great confidence in holding. So I don't know what the AI is doing. I think it has a lot more units somewhere, because that's what I remember playing. Now, it's been a few years since I played the German side in this. Let's attack there. And fall back. Ah, well, September? Don't know if we'll get Christmas leave, but... Now this... This should have been what happened in World War I. had this the tragedy of World War One. World War One destroys society. And we've not yet recovered from it. I've been doing a lot of thinking about, and this is warning to players that this is going to be a little bit of philosophizing. So if you just want gameplay, if you're watching later, skip ahead a bit. It used to be, and this can be at different times and different places, people put their trust in other people. Okay. There were some dividing lines that people would choose up on. But a lot of it was the trust in the people that were leading you as to what side or what group you're going to pick. Like an idea of the dividing lines that we can see in Europe is religion. And that would basically be between Protestant and Catholic. And I'm not just talking about World War I, I'm talking about prior to World War I. But a lot of the soldiers that fought the various the various wars, like in the 18th century, 17th century, you say particularly in the 17th century, you have a lot of wars of religion in Europe. And you have some nationalism going on, but a lot of that's even fairly weak. And it's sort of the trust in leadership that, let's just for the moment presume you think you know your thing very well. Whether it's being a farmer, and there's a lot to know about like being a farmer. It isn't just like you plant and you go harvest some crops and magically everything works. We're gonna like presume that you're an expert at being a farmer, or you're an expert at being a cobbler and making shoes, or you're an expert at being a merchant. Sniffing out what the price of wheat is over here versus the price of wheat over here, and see where you should buy and where you should send it to. And if you're doing that, you're providing a good service to society, because if the price of wheat is high here because there's greater demand, because let's say there's been a crop failure or whatever, and the price is low here because they have an abundance, you're helping everybody. You're helping the farmer out, because even though you may buying it cheap at this year, this season, whatever, you're actually buying it from him instead of letting it rot, and you're moving it to where it's needed. And you're not doing it like you do in a paradox game or something. When you're commanding everything, it's happening dynamically through markets. You're having a bunch of merchants make a bunch of decisions on how to move goods around, and it's, if you will, capitalism or proto-capitalism. And so you have these people that they know their world, if you know what I mean, not the world, but their world that they work in well. And so they have the trust that the political leaders, the other institutional leaders, have a similar knowledge of their world as well. So, yeah, by the time we're talking World War I, most of these soldiers are not full-time soldiers. They're farmers, shoemakers, merchants, whatever, being drafted into the military. And they may have gone through national service prior to, the war breaking out. So they're not like freshly trained, but, they're reservists and whatnot. And they have the trust that military institution above them knows what they're doing. And by the end of the war, that's entirely gone. No one, because Jamnuska says the boys will be home before Christmas. Well, in leadership, you've got to keep your people motivated. But you also need to manage expectations, if you will. So that to tell everybody, whether it's at September or if it's back in May, hey, we're all going to be home by Christmas. That's, trying to give them expectations as opposed to, hey, victory, we'll have victory. We just got to persevere. And maybe a good example of this would be Churchill and his speeches when he early, comes into being prime minister in Britain. He's not promising any damn thing except for a long, hard war, and eventually victory. And so this is one thing that I'm trying to wrap my head around. And what is the future and what we've lost that I think we need to regain. Like I say, after World War I, institutions treat individuals if they're cogs in a machine, and replaceable cogs. And outside of edge cases, which would either be mostly either somebody's way too smart or way too dumb, most people can be trained to perform reasonably well in any sort of job. So it doesn't matter. You just get the guy, you put him, whether it's through a school, a training program, an internship, he's going to, or she, he or she, but we're going to just say he's going to be acceptable for the job. So they're perfectly replaceable. And we see this with, and I don't want to make this out to be right or left, though there is a right or left component or political party component in it, but we see this in the people that want mass immigration into the Western world. And some of them are governmental people, some of them are business people, because they believe that these people are just fundamentally replaceable cogs. Sure, they may speak a different language. Sure, they may not know the city that they've now arrived in. But hey, given a little bit of time, they're going to be doing something. Yeah, it may be and they may be particularly thinking they will be low-skilled workers. They'll be a painter, a drywaller, just an inexperienced laborer on a farm, or the inexperienced laborer in a factory, or whatever. And when not only that, they'll also be a consumer, because once because we move in and keep labor prices low, they will but get a job, and then they'll have money to spend on things. They'll keep the restaurants open, the fast food restaurants open, because they'll buy food. They'll keep the stores open because they'll need to go buy a new pair of jeans, and they'll just sort of fill the gaps in society, because they're treating everybody, and this is what really happens in World War I, treating everybody like a cog. And partially because of modern industrialization, you no longer need craftsmen. You just need a guy who can, use a paint roller. You don't need an artist to paint your house. You just need somebody who can just sort of do a okay job, and that's fine. Give him a bit of training, a few hours of experience, and he'll be painting houses. And so it doesn't matter. And so people are being treated like cogs, and I think this is part of the problem. And with everybody, we just got to have the right formula. If we have the right formula, we will be a success. General Scaro learning, yes. It will be a success, which that could be an economic formula, communism, capitalism. It could be government formula, democracy or dictatorship. It could be a business formula. If you organize your company in the right manner, you're going to be just fine. There's going to be no problems, or well, there'll be problems, but the answer won't be you need different leadership. It'll just be, we need to retrain this manager who's not doing so well. So we're going to take these, our 10% lowest or 20% lowest managers, or maybe all managers, and send them to a training camp. And they'll just be fine. Not that we need to fire some of them. No, God, no, not that. They're all the same. But if we just have the right table of organization, and we just have the right, because I've worked a little bit in corporate life, not a lot, and that's very much the way they see it. They don't, if you don't work, if you're not going to get on board with the program, we're going to fire you. And well, yeah, I understand that you need to do the company policy, and the policy is all that matters. It's not how well, it's not, so long as you're doing the basic level of the job, they don't care. If I'm making myself clear. And so, if they're like, if you're just doing the job, your opinion is important to us so long as it's our opinion. Exactly, Jamnuska. It's not like, oh, hey, there's a bright, and part of this is a scaling issue, meaning whether you're talking Amazon or some of the mega grocery store companies, or whatever it is, they've got 100,000 employees, 200,000 employees. And how do you do this? And how do you handle this? Now, because of some of the laws that are forcing people to be treated as if they're cogs, they are being limited in what they can and can't do. And so they accept not just mediocrity, but they accept low performance so long as it's minimum performance. Because if they have the right system, it will just work. Where I'm, and systems matter, okay? They do. It isn't a binary question of, do individuals matter or do systems matter? If you have the right, if everybody in your army studies the army, battle manual, tactical manual, and well, so long as they implement this book, we win. How would how many out? I know all of you guys here study history enough, and was Patton winning and Rommel winning because they read the manual and they followed the manual and replaced them with any other general that had gone through the right school training program and just do that manual, and were they going to win equally well? How many here think that would be a likely answer, that it just follow the manual and then you're good? Now, you need manuals, not saying you don't, but I would say people like Patton and people like Rommel are reading their men, reading the battlefield, reading everything, and are making decisions on what to do, and that is why you have brilliant execution in these cases. And I think, because if we look at the stagnation of economy, of development, of society since World War II, it has been a huge stagnation if you look at the growth and development of the world in the 19th century and leading up to World War II, particularly. We've stagnated. How many new inventions are coming out of Europe? Where you looked at how Britain basically builds the modern world. It really does. I mean, I know a bunch of you are from different countries and go, but my country did. Yeah. But really it's Britain building the modern world. And how small of a place. You don't look at the British Empire. Look at Britain, how small of a place it really is compared to everywhere else, and how much Britain contributes to the modern world. So this is what is destroyed. Now, had this happened, get back to sort of where I was starting at. Had this happened, had Germany been stalled out, and we're not finished with this yet, but we're definitely seeing a very different pattern than what happened in World War II, or World War I, sorry. Had this happened, well, the leadership, I think, particularly in Germany, would have shown that victory in the sense of conquest was not going to happen. But the leaders on both sides got into such a place that whether they were blind to it just because they couldn't see it, or they just didn't know how to admit that victory just wasn't possible. And this is institutionally, and it's not just a few people at the top, it's up and down the whole, because you still get with the German defeat, oh, it was a stab in the back. The army was okay. The Navy was fine. It was sitting, sitting in the port ready to go any moment and go smash the British Navy, no problem. And hey, the the Air Force, well, hey, just one or two new models of aircraft, and we were going to win. No, it was stab in the back, and fill in however, by whoever and whatever groups that we want to talk about stabbing in the back. And so even after the the defeat of Germany, that the army could not admit to itself that it had been defeated. And the British and the French armies and political systems couldn't admit to themselves that they couldn't defeat Germany. I mean, they can't. It takes the Americans to come in and change the equation. Without the Americans changing the equation, and even prior to, if American, we can't go up. I love talking when I'm playing. Hey, ZZ. I love talking and playing while playing Hearts of Iron because I have a world map to go around and focus on as a demonstration. Denmark is neutral in World War I, to the point that they will not sell arms to either side knowingly. There's all kinds of shenanigans going on because they have the Matson light machine gun that's rather good and everybody wants it, or at least the Russians want it and the Germans want it and the Austrians want it. I'm sure the Turks would take everyone they could get. Maybe the French want it. I don't know, but definitely the Russians and definitely the Central Powers want every single Madsen machine gun they can get. And Denmark says, nope, we're not going to sell to any belligerent power. We'll sell to neutrals. If Spain wants a bunch or Sweden wants a bunch, or whoever, somebody down in Latin America wants a bunch, sure. And periodically they would sell some, and then those would show up either in Russian hands or German hands or whatever. It was sort of a spy game going on. But had the Americans had sort of a similar attitude, nope, we're not selling weapons or munitions. Maybe they'll still sell food, because France and Britain, sending all that manpower to the front needs lots of food because a lot of their farms aren't working well because all the manpower is away. So, had America not been supplying huge amounts of stockpiles of weapons and munitions and as well as the materials to make more, selling steel, selling explosives, DuPont gets rich, not just selling shells, but selling the chemical components to the explosives that are put in all of those shells that are fired. Had all those not been done, France and Britain might have been able to hold the line well enough against Germany, but there was no practical sense that they were going to come in and defeat Germany. So, but they couldn't see that. And they couldn't figure that out. And so that is what is lost. Now, we've gotten to the point I would say again that we're losing trust in institutions. And I would say that no one should trust an institution, ever. But they should be able to develop trust in individuals to do their best, if you know what I mean. And I don't know if that's right now possible in the modern world. And by this, what I'm saying is I'm trying to, because it's different than losing the trust in World War One in the institutions is what I'm trying to say is institutions in the modern sense are soulless because, unlike before World War One, is because everybody in that institution, and when I say institution, I mean could be a business, could be a non-governmental organization, a charity of some sort. It could be a religious organization. It could be a government organization. It could be something like the Boy Scouts. Any sort of institution, because they're treating all of their people up and down the line as if they're replaceable cogs. And what I'm talking about is people should not like, well, the institution says whatever, No, you've got to put your trust in an individual, not an institution. You've got to go and say, okay, what does the, I know they just changed out the leadership at Intel, which I'm forgetting the name, and what is it, Pat Gelsinger or something, I don't know, who came from the sort of engineering side of Intel, and the board has removed him and put in new people. What I'm saying is if you should be able to have trust in maybe the leadership of Intel to follow out a particular plan, but once the people that you sort of put your trust in are gone, well, there's no reason to continue to trust that institution. It's like you get, governments. Any movement out there, any other government who puts their trust in the American government is an idiot. I know I've gotten in trouble, or people come, I know there's probably not going to be that many people watching this, but I gotten in trouble in saying all this stuff. No, they're an idiot. Because, if you are, and I'm talking, mostly here about other groups, if you're the Kurds in Syria or Iraq or wherever, you're the Kurds and you go, oh, hey, some American guy has showed up, whether he's part of the military, part of the CIA, or part of whatever, and go, hey, you just rebel against your current government, and we'll supply you with weapons. Trust us. You are a fucking idiot. If you are Ukraine, and you go, and again, some American person, it could be the president of the United States. It doesn't matter. If Joe Biden shows up or whoever, I don't mean to pick on Biden or anything, but just shows up and goes and say, hey, we will defend Ukraine to the, forever. And you go, oh, hey, yes, the U.S. government says this. No. Biden says that. Every 4 years we have a new election. There's going to be a new president. Every 8 years there has to be a new president because, hey, extreme finger, we're talking about how World War I destroyed Western civilization. Or we're looking at Vietnam, South Vietnam, and go, hey, yeah, we're pulling out all of our troops and most of our advisors, but trust us, if North Vietnam attacks, we'll come back and support you. If actual North Vietnam attacks. And for the guerrillas, well, for every artillery shell you shoot at a guerrilla, we'll send you new ones. Don't worry, trust us. We didn't. You know, when we said, "Oh, hey, Ukraine, give up your nuclear weapons, give them back to Russia." Yeah, we'll set up a defense agreement with you. Then trust us, we'll defend Ukraine if Russia attacks. And they take Crimea, and the U.S. does nothing because these institutions in America are, changing because we have elections. So maybe the person who shows up, is actually representing the current administration, and they're not lying to you. They're coming in and we're going to back you. Trust us. And they mean it. They mean it 100%. But that doesn't mean the next administration is going to follow the same pattern or principles. And so this gets back to, you don't trust the organization. You've got to put your trust in an individuals. But you also have to understand that those individuals are going to let you down. Because no one's perfect. No one is always going to do the right thing. This is what, and I was watching, something briefly, some leftists, all the Trump supporters are in a cult. They, whatever Trump says, they think Trump is perfect and Trump is great. And, and no. Most of them, most don't. No, most of the actual supporters, I don't mean just the people that voted against the Democrats and voted for Trump, but most of Trump's supporters just believe Trump's going to do his best. And he's going to try. Now, he may fail. He may make a lot of bad decisions. And some of the things is, when he changes his mind and does something different, and these people are looking at it not that, we voted for Trump, so he put on tariffs. And then he's not doing tariffs, so God damn it, he lied to us. No, he was suggesting that tariffs would be a way to bring manufacturing back to the U.S. Is he going to implement all the tariffs? I don't know. But that's not the point. The point is we're putting our trust that he's going to do his best. And he's given us a general program of what he's trying to achieve. And this is what is lost in World War I, is the ability to put your trust in fallible people and look for the infallible formula. And they don't work. Oh, okay. That's enough of gamer pontificating. I hope I'm being understood relatively well as to my what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to articulate here. Okay, you're going to move up into here. You're going to entrench. Let's rotate you slightly more like that. And you are going to move up here and entrench. Okay. Well, I see Extreme Finger, or otherwise known as Jan, is playing Imperator Rome. Good for him. The game as it is now is what it should have been in the state at release, and could still use a lot of development. Obviously, they've stopped developing Imperator Rome. Well, very good, General Sorrow. Yeah. And so yeah, I'm trying to understand, because I know a bunch of you have watched a lot of my content, but this last year has really, I still more fascinated by World War II than World War One, but I had always sort of believed that World War II was the real consequential war, and it was, and World War II really does set up the geopolitical realities mostly for post-war world, and so that's very important there. But it's this shift, because if you look at almost all of the ideologies that we're fighting over today, they're 19th century, and I'm talking mostly in the Western world, or whatever, but that even sort of flows into everywhere. Almost everywhere we're fighting over 19th century ideologies that, sure, post 19th century, whether you got Mao or Stalin, well, not, I don't know how much Stalin really does, but Mao or Lenin, they're or other, um, Noam Chomsky or whatever, other people, uh, adding to, Marxism in one format or another. Um, but they're all working from Marx, or the other sort of economic based is, Adam Smith's um, capitalism, that you can talk about Austrian economics and some of the other you know um, people working on it. To my and if you go, oh well, fascism or something, well, fascism is just another workings on socialism. um, you don't have really, since that sort of period, you don't have new philosophies, really, new ideas, new understanding since that time. Glad to hear it. Sounded good to me. But isn't that all paradox strategies? Um, Games. I don't know. Um, Paradox. Paradox have gotten lazy. And in some ways they're doing well, in some ways they're doing bad. Release a bare bones games and then fill it with DLCs. Well, yeah, to a degree, but they most assuredly, well, and I don't play all the Paradox game. I haven't played Vicky 2. Um, the current EU, I didn't play it anywhere near release. I don't know. You may be right that it's just all Paradox games, but um, okay. Here we're going to. This is sit down. We're gonna move up here. Get here and entrench. Looking that way. And these guys are gonna come up and entrench. Yes, like that. Hey, MM MNDB. You know, I really think Western society, as a society, and there's definitely individuals too, but as a society is mentally sick. And I'm not saying that lightly. I'm not saying that jokingly. I really, really think there is. I think some new ideology is going to spring up. Well, that's sort of what I'm working on, Extreme Finger. Because I am not saying that formulas don't matter. Because from everything that I can see, the most mismanaged capitalist-based system is working better than the best managed true socialist. I mean, whether you want to call it communist or not. I'm not talking social welfare here. I'm talking basically the government owning the means of production, and not just in a particular field like healthcare, but overall, the government owning the means of production. That, like I said, the best, the best social Marxist system is worse than the worst capitalist-based system. So the formulas are important. And you know, this is and warfare, and again, you know, this is one of the reasons I've been staying with World War I as opposed to trying to play whether Strategic Command or other games, playing other games, because I still think about this here. Up until World War I, you had the idea that you could train a man. Well, okay, no, you needed to take somebody with a certain level. Doesn't have to be like you know, Olympic sports level, but a certain level of skill. And then you needed to take years of training to create him. And right now my mind is a cavalryman. Could be a knight in shining armor with a big lance and a shield. Could be an Ulan, which is a cavalryman with a lance. Or it could be a more light, you know, hussar, who has a saber and a carbine on a horse. Because that guy has to be a good rider. He has to work a lot with that horse. The horse isn't, you know, each horse is different. It has its own personality. You've got to train it. You've got to train together. You've got to create this thing that works together as an individual, if you will. You know, the horse and rider, you know, how he swings his sword and practices all of that. And then you have to train that unit so that the unit works together. And that is how you would win battles. Store numbers mattered. You know, you put 500 horsemen out on the battlefield and he's facing 5,000. You're going to lose. You know, it just, we're talking some reasonable battlefield, not some, little pass that you can't get around, or some, 300 Spartans or something, we're talking, some sort of reasonable, pickable battlefield. Yeah, numbers mattered, but skill and training and dedication matters. Where by the end of World War One, that cavalryman is gone. He matters not anymore. It's, can that guy drive that little Renault tank? Can the mechanic keep that tank operating? Can the guy in the turret pull the trigger on the machine gun? How easy, how quickly can we just cog in replacement guys for those Renault, FT-17 tanks, compared to creating a unit of cavalry that takes years to create? And if it's destroyed, it's going to take years to, because you'll have to have a whole breeding program just for the horses to keep the horses going. And if you lose too many horses, if you lose your normal sort of rate of horses, they've got horses back at the depot headquarters that are raising new horses because horses get old and die, horses break their legs and need to be put down, the usual sorts of. And sure, even if you win a battle, you could be having attrition higher than your your production rate. But if you wipe out that unit, you can't just recreate it. There isn't just another collection of horses that you can pull off of farm wagons and they become cavalry horses. No, the horse itself has to be trained, and normally you train it alongside of the soldier and all that. It has to be bred to be a cavalry horse. So, yeah, to a point, I'm sure. Hello, Albert Villeneuve-Nguyen. How you doing? Can you give me the best example of a communist system and the worst example of a capitalist system? Interesting. I'll get back to that. Give me a minute. While I think about this. And so, yeah, with modern technology, the craftsmanship or artistry, potentially, however you want to use those words, and you can use them in different sort of ways, is no longer required to be particularly successful. You need to be able to do some of the basics, and we can train. I can probably train all of you, or somebody could train. If I'm not saying I'm good at it by any means, but all of us could probably be trained relatively well to drive a Renault FT-17 to within probably 30 days, to be able to handle the basic maintenance mechanic stuff, because it's simple machinery, with the idea that if something is broken, we get a replacement. We're not having to craft a new thing. We're just figuring out sort of what's wrong and replacing things, and command and operate that machine gun on that. And so because maybe the crew is bigger than two people. You got two people that drive it, one driving and one in that tank. But maintenance and some other stuff, maybe you have 3 or 4 guys additionally to the 2 guys that are in the tank when it drives out into the battlefield. We can probably get all of us here, and I don't even know you guys, and I don't even know your ages, but I can probably all go through the basic training and be a decent FT-17 tanker, and whatnot, and we can all learn that skill. So to a point, we can be interchangeable cogs because of the modern industrial world. You no longer need to be that cavalryman. You no longer need to do more than the basics. So to function. Now, I will say we can see individuals that sometimes can rise above things. Just the one of the Gurkhas that, in Afghanistan or whatever, single-handedly fights off a huge number of Taliban types or whatever it was. And yeah, you can find the individuals that will rise above just basically operating, the things. And so, you go from, hey, how many, good cavalrymen can we put on that field to, oh, you just got to operate that machine gun. Just keep that machine gun operating. Keep that Vickers or Maxim gun operating, and you're fine. Okay. Best example of the communist system or a heavily socialist system. I don't know. Maybe the best example of... Okay, here's going to be a controversial. It's going to be the same thing. Albert? 1970s Britain. I think I hit on it. How do you like that for an answer? Because in my understanding, and I'm sure I have some of this wrong, but basically all of the car manufacturers in Britain in the 1970s were nationalized and owned by the government. Much of other industry was owned by the government. So this is means of production. And so that is the worst of capitalism and the best of socialism. The cars were falling apart, weren't working well, were just terrible. Yeah, more from a manufacturing than a design element. Society was stagnating. And it was Margaret Thatcher who comes in and privatizes like all the car industries. And so we're not just talking about, oh, hey, the railway company, or, oh, hey, the power companies, which a lot of them were. But a lot of the major manufacturing in Britain, a lot of the mines had been, I believe, nationalized and other things. So, but that was also, and it was still trying to run as a market economy in that it was, so much of the means of production had been, large-scale ones had been nationalized and, government owned and run as a social welfare program, while still trying to run in a market system that, wasn't a, Britain during World War II, and like 10 years after it, with rationing for food and whatnot. So there was still a certain level of market. You could buy foreign-made cars or whatever. It wasn't quite a true Marxist system. So it was still sort of that. So that's maybe my answer. I know it may not be the one you're looking for, and because I could think of like Tito's Yugoslavia, or I could look at, I don't know, East German Marxism. What I meant is because you mentioned that the worst capitalist society will always be better than the... I understood that, yeah, than the best socialist society. I wanted to have an example of the best socialist society versus the worst capitalist society. Yeah, I hear you. And so, I got what you're saying, and it's an interesting question, because we can look at Cuba, who is collapsing right now, and the only reason that they functioned for so long was because of outside socialist socialist welfare, if you will. During the Cold War, the Soviet Union was propping Cuba up. You can see countries like today, like Venezuela, that are just in horrific shape because of their communist, they've nationalized all the major industries in Venezuela. So Venezuela had been one of the bright stars of Latin America, and it is now one of the gloomiest countries in in South America down there. You know, and so what is a well-run communist system? What's best? And so then I hit on, but I was thinking what was the worst of Britain, and Britain with all of its nationalization was just going really bad. Um, but it was still better than all of the East Bloc stuff. But then I thought, well, hey, they were socializing, nationalizing a lot of society, so they were becoming a Marxist state, and that was probably the best run of the Marxist state. So it's sort of that kind of thing. Argentina, interesting. I wouldn't put, and maybe it's my ignorance, and I know Millet is called them, Marxism and whatnot, but I don't, and to my understanding and watching Argentina right now, we're seeing the current government sell off, or closing down government departments, like the women's ministry. I don't think they had a men's ministry, but they had a women's ministry. Close it down, and then selling off like its buildings and any of its property that it has. But I don't know if in Argentina, and again, it may just be purely a lack of knowledge. I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but I don't know in Argentina of significant government ownership of the means of production. You can be redistributive, meaning taking from one and giving to another on a socialist principle, which socialism is a Marxist principle, but without the government owning the means of production. And when I'm talking about true socialist, true Marxist type principles, I'm talking about the idea of, see all that farmland out there growing food? That's owned by the government. And the government, and those are government workers out there on that, farm. Like, see, I live in the greater LA area, and most of the farmland's gone from here. But you know what? Actually, fairly nearby, there is some farmland that's currently growing food. Well, maybe not now in the middle of winter, I don't know. But annually, every year, is growing a lot of food. And it's on a Navy base. And there's farmland on the Navy base. But the Navy ain't growing the food there. It's they need, because they store weapons, like cruise missiles and big weapons there. You can't, they have to have space around the literal bunkers that they store the weaponry in. So that big open space, they lease it out from some contracting to some company or whatever that does farming around it. So they make some money back from using that open space, just in case there's somebody mishandles a Tomahawk missile and it blows up or something. You'll break windows, but hopefully you won't kill people, civilians outside of the base. So it needs a bunch of dead space, and that can be used as farmland. But yeah, the government, who owns the fields? Is it the people, or is it the individuals, or is it the government? Generally speaking, and is the government, are the people working on those fields government employees? That's what, because we can get into details. What is communism and what is socialism? I'm talking about the government owning the means of production, not just about a social welfare state that definitely has Marxist redistribution ideas as part of it. But I'm trying to keep that away from being and those could be badly run Marxist things. Hey, Beamslam, hello. Are we sorting out the world situation today? Don't we always? They are owning all the production of oil in Argentina. Okay, yes. Like Mexico, Pemex owns all the oil production in Mexico. Okay, and so that is a good example of the government owning the means of production. So, okay, is it just that one industry, or is it other industries? And not in a defense of the government owning the oil companies, but some nations believe that the underground resources belong collectively to the people of the nation and not to the people who own the ground above, if you will. Just a little personal information. My parents owned a house, again in the LA area. I don't own that house anymore, but they owned that house, and when they got it, they also got the mineral rights below that house, because when whatever back in the 1920s, whatnot, they when they were setting up and buy, a housing development area, Put Street, whoever, it was, and I don't know all the detail, was, outlining, these are the plots of land for houses and whatnot. You bought the house, but you bought everything down. So you own the mineral rights. Well, when my parents sold the house, they did sell the house, but they kept the mineral rights. So, and I've inherited that. I think I got to look into something, but I think it's like $20 or $30 a year because there's some oil around. I get a check for like that for owning the mineral rights, because in that general area they sort of figure out size of lot and how much. So yeah, here, depending on how and what land you buy, you can buy both the surface as well as the mineral rights below the land. Some nations don't have that as an idea. Now, should that then equate that the government owns the oil companies, as opposed to the like here in America, if it's government-owned land, if this is like this forest is government-owned land, but they find oil under it, the government owns the oil. What they will do is contract out with a company that will then come and drill the oil out, and the government will get a percentage made off of the oil, meaning the people that are developing it will own the machinery, the piping, all that stuff that operates it there. And if it's shut down, they get to take that stuff away. But and so they're revenue sharing with the government for the oil and the oil field that's being developed. Now, if it's a private ownership down here and they own that, well, then the oil company can either buy it all or contract with the local guy again for percentage of the oil. So it depends on how you're doing that. So yeah, I'm not sure about what other industries in Argentina own. And so yeah, this is the thing, and like in a lot of countries, in Europe particularly, but the government owns all the hospitals, so they own a lot of the medical industry. Where in America, the government owns very little of the medical industry, mostly just for veterans, and they pay the they pay for patients, Medicare and Medicaid, the government pays for. So yeah, it's something of a mixed system. But yeah, I guess those are my sort of best answers at the moment. But that's Albert, that's a very intriguing question as to what's the worst run capitalist, because that is an interesting one. And what is the best runs, heavily socialist, Marxist type system. The idea of absolutes, I think, and we often talk in them, but the idea of absolutes that either the means of production is owned collectively by the people, and what's the means of production? Is this computer sitting next to me making this show? Yeah, I know there's just, depending on various services between YouTube, Twitch, and Rumble right now, I think it's about 15 people watching. And some more will watch it later. But, and people will come and go during the stream, obviously. But, let's just say that there was 100,000 people watching this. Okay, that's a big show. Watching it live. And so is this computer the means of production that the government, that the people own collectively? Or is it the big servers that, depending whether it's Twitch or YouTube or whatever, that are owning the big server rooms? What is the means of production and who owns that? Now, on the opposite ends, in a libertarian world, if you will, our ownership rights absolute. And so, and probably the real question is no. It's a mix. It's an idea of we can look right here at this example here, the railways. And there's definitely been various times through the histories of the railways of these nations as to how much are privately owned versus government owned. But let's just say there's a railway company in Belgium here, right? That's, Rail Belgique or whatever they would call it. And it's privately owned and privately operated. But the government, I would say, has the and which is, in speaking in the name of the people, has the absolute right to take it all over in its what it's doing. I'm not saying it's nationalizing it in a ownership sense, but going, nope, hey, all the railway workers, you keep showing up for work, we'll keep paying you. You'll get paid. But we're now scheduling the trains for the war effort, whether it's to bring a French unit up or bring supplies up or evacuate civilians or whatever. We're running your railway in conjunction with you. I'm not saying that you're firing all of the management. No, you're presuming the management is keeping the trains flowing, but it's no longer what makes you the most profit. It's what is going to benefit the nation. And yeah, there has to be, because the workers have to be paid, because they, unless you're going to, like a soldier, give them food and give them housing, which you might do that in cases, but let's presume most of them are going home at night. I mean, obviously you get them out in the field and repairing stuff over, but they'd already have, set up for that. So you've got to pay the workers. You've got to pay for the coal or whatever that's running the engines. I mean, theoretically, you could be burning wood. This time there was no, diesel electric engines or whatever. So you've got to be paying for the maintenance of the engines. So you have to be paying, the government or somebody has to be paying that company just to keep it going. But the government can go, well, yeah, we're going to pay it to keep it going, but you can't, not just that we're not going to allow you to profiteer off of the war, sure, you can use it, but for $1 billion an hour. No, because obviously it's a big operation. No, it's at whatever sort of basic rates. And when the war is over, we'll talk about things, but you're going to keep operating it at our needs. And so that conflicts with private property rights, if you will. So we can look at the idea that, oh, hey, you're a lens maker. You make lenses. Whether it's in Belgium or the U.S. or wherever, but it's a capitalist market, market economy type country. We're not talking something that's ideologically fascist or ideologically communist, but they make lenses. And you show up to them and go, hey, you're going to make these binoculars, lenses for these binoculars, and put them in here. Oh, but we make more selling camera lenses. We don't need camera lenses. We need binoculars. You're going to make binoculars. And so that conflicts with private property rights. So private property rights, in a practical sense, are not and should not be absolute. Because, and obviously I'm using extreme examples of this, but it shows how we would all go, well, yeah, if you got, Ghent optics here and you need binoculars for the Belgian army, or you need long-range camera lenses for, aircraft to take, aerial photos, but you can make twice as much selling cameras, pocket cameras to soldiers that are going to take snaps and, snapshots and send them back to their family. Well, you might be able to make double the money on that because the soldiers will pay some of their pay to just get camera and film and take snapshots. No, we need binoculars and we need lenses for aerial photography or whatever it is. And yeah, because you are operating as a private business, we will be paying you for them because you got to get your materials and you got to keep your employees operating, but we're going to sort of kind of set the price for it. Yeah, that's an extreme measure, but we could talk about other things. So the idea of an absolute market economy or an absolute collective means of production. Is a car a collective means of production? Well, is it a taxi cab? Does it take workers to and from work? Does it make 3 trips each direction full of workers, taking them out to the factory and bringing them home every day? That could be a means of production. If you want to have that, so you just get to, where do the means of production and private ownership in a socialist society? So even in there, and this is one thing that Lenin doesn't figure out, but realizes when he tries to do true Marxism, it just can't work. And so he reintroduced certain levels, and I'm not a great expert on it, but certain levels of a market economy that's why you get Marxist-Leninism within the Leninist state. Let's see what Albert is saying. So let's take Argentina in 2010s as the best socialist society, and let's take today's Philippines as the worst capitalist society. Which is best? Well, if you talk about inflation rates, I believe the inflation rates in Argentina were extremely much higher than the Philippines. To my knowledge, the economy was being run rather well in the Philippines. You have other issues there between the two countries. But yeah, I would say the Philippines would be run better. I think there were more people in the 2010s, more Americans thinking about moving to the Philippines than were thinking about moving to Argentina in the 2010s. So I would say the Philippines were being run better economically. Now the Philippines is a poorer country, but that is to do with in my opinion, two reasons. One, the geography, lots of islands in an archipelago that is semi-tropical or tropical. I think it's more tropical. And two, the culture of the people, the Philippines, the culture is nowhere near as developed as sort of the Euro culture of Argentina. But I don't fully go with that. The Argentina is a socialist society. Because yes, I will bow to the knowledge that oil production was government owned. I don't know of any other parts of, because simply, um, because if you want to go, and see, I'm staying away from what I would call fascist or fascistic, maybe not fascism, but fascistic governments, which would be Italy, obviously, or modern day China. I would call modern day China a fascistic country, in that you do have more of an idea of individual ownership. People can be billionaires, but every major industry in China, every major country, excuse me, every major company in China has government monitors at the top level, at least monitoring the activities of that company. I would not call China, even though the Chinese government, I think Costco, and I don't mean if you know America, the big box store chain. I mean Costco, the shipping company. I believe it is owned by the CCP. Norinco, I believe, is owned by the CCP, meaning not owned by an individual that working, but actually the party owns the company. And so there are major companies that are directly owned by um, the government in China, and then there are major companies not owned by the government in China, but all of them have a government, high level government type monitor type peoples in the boardroom. So um, I would not put modern China in the Marxist socialist viewpoint. Now, prior to the 90s, I would, but not um, modern China or current day China or whatever you want to call it, as being an example of that. Oh, well, let's see what I want to do down here. Yeah, I think we're just going to reinforce. No, let's just do it this way. Reinforce down here. That way, we're getting our flanks a bit turned, but they're not really turning our flanks. Meaning I'm shifting some forces. I think we'll be okay. Don't think they can penetrate through that forest and keep supplied. Keep supplied is the key term there. Oh, well, let's see about purchasing. And okay. Not all collectivism or not all collective ideas are Marxist, and not all how do I put this? Not all individual ownership rights, if you will, um, nations are capitalist. Okay, Albert, thanks for hanging out. Hope to see you more often around here. Have a very good day or evening. But you made me think, Albert, and that's very good. I like thinking about things, not just presuming. We need to get some more forces down here, so okay, I think you can. Well, I'm going to let them push on me if they're going to try. Let's try that. Not good enough. Exchange rate. Good enough, that is. And yep, they're entrenched, so we can swap them out and take them. Well, the question is because we can see in here, do we start pushing back? I think the correct answer is yes, we start. We don't, well. Yeah, I think we move up. And we try. There we go. I think we're going to be taking that mirror here in a bit. Oh. Even the detachments could be helpful, so. Now, the next question would be, had a situation like this, meaning a relatively clear, relatively early decision to the war that I think we're sort of setting up here. Had it come about, could I'm trying. Could it become, could it develop without collapsing? Or was it just always going to collapse? Could the old world have learned to navigate modernity, or were they just? And I'm not talking just within like next 5 or 10 years or something, but so would the people have, the people in leadership, and I don't mean just like the presidents and the premiers and those and the kings and whatnot. I'm talking about at all levels of leadership, and business and economy and the people. Would the institutions, would the people in the institutions have adopted to a more modern world given time and needing some levels of stress, meaning wars or conflicts or, because you also have the influenza situation, could they, if not impacted too hard, could they have adapted to modern conditions? Or is it always just a matter of time until the collapse would come? Does anybody have any thoughts on that? Oh, we got this guy here. If they decide to come onto this, push on him, and take him out, okay. Alright, come behind me. Which we still have the rail connection down through here. Yes, we had a division destroyed. There we go. Well, took that out, so that I'm. They got a big artillery piece somewhere here. Now, none of those look like they're good options. That look like a good option there. Let's say that'll teach them to move the horses and the cavalry, but I don't think it teaches them anything. Just moving a bit down here since I don't have strategic redeployment, just in case they do decide to push. There'll be some level of resistance. I'm going to save up more for next turn. All right, it looks like they're really trying to push into this area, so we're going to come down here. We're going to entrench. You're facing that way. You're going to come up to here. Oh, what? You're going to fall back to there. You're going to come in here. You are entrenched here. So back again, was preparing a dinner with some meat I got from a death estate. There's nothing wrong yet. Crossing my fingers. Well, good. I hope. I hope that's sort of a interesting tale there, I guess. Well. Yeah, yeah. If it hadn't been there that long, yeah, that's fine. I'm not suggesting it isn't. It just... I'm presuming it wasn't food poisoning that killed the person or whatever, but yes. That's the one. See, that's what we're missing an artillery division. They have at least one, because they used one in taking Liège. I'm surprised they haven't brought it up anywhere and really smacked down a unit. Well, for the moment here with all of this, I know it's not terribly exciting, is just holding the line. Is, to me, at least at this point in this location, I think is a decent use. Like I say, it looks like you're pushing down in here. I would think somewhere between every 4 or 5 turns they should be able to use that heavy artillery to really just pound out of existence a unit that isn't that isn't maybe rapid advance, but it would be an advance. Okay, with them coming into here, down to here, over to here, we're going to come to here. You're going to get on board ship, and you're going to come over to here. You're going to get off ship, right? You're going to march into there. In French. These out. 97, this is 105, so we're going to swap that up in the front line there. Yeah. Well, at least keep them pushed back some. Are they entrenched? Yes, they are. Supply. Here, okay, super supply because of the port, presumably, because it's not so great coming up through there. You know, it's not 12s and 11s. It's 10s. And pushing down. See, I'm thinking about pushing from the north up here. See if I can turn their flank in Belgium. Got a huge army here waiting for something. Almost forget. Okay. Wait a turn. Did we move? No, or yes, we did. We moved the one. And yes. Okay. Well, some possibilities there. He's got a lot better than I was thinking. We moved into the spider's trap even more so. We're going to wait a turn on that now that we've got a little more reinforcements there. Okay, I think collapsing over here and swinging around neighbor would be better. No. Okay. You can come up there. You can come up there. There we go. That's pushing on them some. We'll see if they replace the unit. Yeah, that's the fort. Up here. Let's entrench that. Then entrench. Cover that. These guys will come this way. Because again, I don't think anybody's coming through the old ends. I mean, not as long as they're not coming, or not coming along a road. Oh, it's being sent. Okay, here Neanderlands have stomped the Miss Neanderlands. Have you run out of pretty girls? Oh, Netherlands. Oh, Netherlands. Oh, you're talking. Okay, Arno. Yeah, yeah, Arno. Why have you stopped the Miss Netherlands? Maybe they all have penises or something. I don't know. That could be why they stopped them. Ah, so it probably is. Or they should all have penises or something, maybe. I don't know, but yeah, we'll wait on that when we get to reinforcements where they can come in and hit harder. They want to just destroy anything with a tradition. Anything that people view positively with tradition, or with a traditional setting. Okay, yes. Okay, let's. Oh, Germany is also in a weird place right now. I don't know. I see instability coming, and with that instability, I see change coming. Hindenburg defeats the Russians at Masuren Lakes. Okay, very good. That looks like Hindenburg right there. Hey, Admiral Teague. Man, the Lower Decks episode has everyone asking questions and no one watching it. Well, I think I'm not watching any of it. I blocked the. I'm just somehow Twitter recommended somebody that came up and tweeted, "I love all versions of Star Trek, blah 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 blah, and Lower Decks and whatever else," and I just blocked the person. You know, I love all real Star Trek. And by that, I include Enterprise. I like the series. Yeah, it had its flaws, but I don't have the harsh, view that Doomcock has on it. After a while, I noped out of the Voyager, but I still thought it was Star Trek, but I just sort of thought it got lost. I mean, I love Deep Space Nine and whatnot, but yeah, so at least up to Enterprise. Uh, and I also noped out of all of the. I've not seen any of the alternative Star Trek movies. I forget what the title of the last Next Generation movie I saw, but the others I just did not see. All with a different cast in that. But everybody out there, Admiral Teague runs a really great channel, lots of live streams, looks at pop culture, Star Trek, and other stuff. So click on his, or if he wants to post it, click on his link there on his title to find his channel, or if he wants to post it, is fine. It's really good stuff. He posted a really nice video on his view of Daniel Penny and getting his whole situation. I just don't have time to hang out in all of his live streams, but yeah, really good stuff there. They sent the AI after me last week. ENT, yeah, start prequels, not good, but yeah. The Kelvin movies are bad, and they're distinct from the bad. Yeah, I didn't watch any of those. Yeah, I didn't watch any of those stuff. Any of that. I just completely noped out. Didn't even consider watching it. I am afraid to go to modern movies. I mean, not like, oh, I'm afraid I can't go in. No, I'm just like, it's not going to be good. Why waste my time? I mean, I know there are a few good stuff out there, but it's mostly I just don't think it's going to be good, so I just don't go. Yeah, yeah. Uh, they. How do I put this? They had to destroy Daniel Penny. They failed, but the New York system, shall we say, I think there's multiple motives for the people that are trying to fuck over cities, not just New York. Um, from I think some people's motives are trying to drive property prices down so that they can invest in them now, and in 15 or 20 years from now, when the pendulum swings the other way and a modern Rudy Giuliani is going to come in and clean up whatever city it may be, the property values are going up. So some of it, I think, is monetary corruption. Some of it, I believe, is ideological. They just believe in the leftist bullshit. Some of them actually just want to destroy Western civilization in any way they can, so they'll do whatever they can to destroy it. But what they fear is, whether it's as extreme as Death Wish, I'm talking particularly the original movie. Later ones were good in the sort of semi-comical sense, but the original one was rather good. Charles Bronson. Those youngsters who haven't seen it should watch Death Wish. But as well as just the general public smacking down, if you will, and to whatever level, bad behavior. Not always necessarily need to be life-threatening, but just, standing up to the bullies and saying, stop your bullshit. which may be punching somebody or something. It depends on what the people are doing. They can't have that. They have to focus and target anyone who stands up for themselves or for others. They can only allow the police to do that, and only to an extent, because you'll notice that, yes, sometimes the police go after, I forget the guy who was selling Lucy cigarettes and gets choked out. Yeah, do you really have to go after, do the police need to enforce sales of non-tax cigarettes by individuals? I think that's bullshit. That the police are worrying about this. I mean, if there's a purse snatcher or a shoplifter or some other crazy stuff, yeah, the police are getting involved. But somebody out there that's, if you see a 3-card Monte game, tell them to go home. You see somebody who's trying to sell a box of rocks as a stereo cheap or something. A friend of my cousin was, a guy I didn't know, but a friend of my cousin was in New York, fell for that once. Or, there's a lot of scams. You just tell the people to go home or whatever. Don't try to, be too authoritarian with them. The police need to maintain order, need to push back on some of that. Yeah, so sometimes the police individually or whatever will go too far, and and whatever, I don't. But yeah, there's, but a lot of the stuff, isn't too far that the police do. But they only want the police to maintain order. They want you to be afraid of maintaining order in your neighborhood, your society. And so they have to focus on you more than the actual criminal. So, and there's, so it's not, because I know a bunch of people that are very much conspiracy theorists. Now, sometimes they're right, but it's not all a conspiracy. Just like I say, it's different people with different motives, all sort of working, if you will, in concert. Not that they talk to each other, but, a judge, well, hey, yeah, the guy, he broke the law or whatever. It's in front of the thing. Well, but have you ever had a person, the other way get charged? No. Well, so it's just, yeah, they're just not taking into account all kinds of stuff. And so, yeah, it's bad, and I'm getting out. Okay. Have you slammed your daily amount of beams? Oh, beam slam. Okay, yes. Eric Garner, that's probably it. Yes. Large black man. And yeah, and so in the Siggy salesman case, the neighborhood was targeted by saturation law enforcement with the goal of arresting every single lawbreaker that day. Yeah, and I'm not saying that there wasn't a resisting of arrest and there wasn't a, I'm not saying it's 100% the police officer's fault that he choked out and died, but I'm just, somebody's not paying their tax on a cigarette, or somebody selling, Kool-Aid or lemonade or something, kids' lemonade stand on the New York City streets is different than somebody throwing a rock through somebody's window. It's, I mean, it might be hurting somebody that is scamming the system, that, and all that. So, yeah, but he, just following orders is not good enough. It's like, oh yeah, we tell the guys to go home, we do this, but going after real threats. Did they, arresting every single lawbreaker that day? How many jaywalkers in that neighborhood did they arrest, Admiral Teague? And my understanding in jaywalking is natural to people of your city. So, that's illegal. Obviously, it's illegal so that if somebody gets hit in it, that's not just the car driver's fault or whatever. But, and so, yeah, I get, one-day surge, and so I think he was doing it near a school. Was he selling it to kids? I mean, it's, that, if he, and yeah, maybe he was. I mean, that a little bit would change my opinion if he was, selling it to somebody who's obviously a kid, um, not just somebody who might be, but isn't everywhere near a school in New York City, just because you're densely populated there. I don't know, and it just, and I followed it, basically not in detail at the time, from the other coast. So obviously I wasn't getting a lot of local reports. I was getting, the national reports at the time. And so, yeah, so sometimes I think the police do overreact. And I do know your law enforcement family background, Admiral Teague. But, I think generally the police are generally doing good. Um, and obviously, there's bad apples. Yes, everywhere is. Yeah. Jaywalking is neutral. You must, I guess, an excuse to stop you and check your ID. Yeah, and that's, and that would be one thing if they were just like checking people's ID to look, um, for people who have, wants and warrants. I mean, that's one thing. If you can articulate a crime, on somebody, whether it's speeding or, jaywalking or, selling loose cigarettes, and you go, this is the crime, not just, oh, hey, you're walking down the street, I want to see your ID. That's unconstitutional, as far as I know. Again, not a lawyer, but as far as I know. But if they go, oh, hey, you're speeding, let's see your driver's license, because you're driving a car, you need to have a driver's license. Let's see that. Okay, and then they can run that to see if there's any wants or warrants against you. Fine, you know. Yeah, no one's perfect. But yeah, that's what I'm saying. But so they can't allow people like Daniel Neely to exercise self-defense, because the animals won't be able to take over the zoo, if you will, if people can defend themselves. If you're not allowed to be out without ID. Ah, it's an arrestable not to have ID. Well, okay. I wonder if that would be an interesting case to see if they makes it, the Supreme Court, that you must have ID to be out. But then do you have to show? At least my understanding is, again, not a police officer, not a lawyer. My understanding is you do not have to show ID unless they can articulate a crime. Now they may have to have it, but if you don't have ID, you don't have to show it. Unless you're, like I said, unless they can articulate a crime. But one of the many reasons I feel blessed not to be a New Yorker. I do not like police states. I do not like the idea that, okay, let's be smart about this. Let's do aerial reconnaissance first. I'm going to do it because I've seen people get free jewelry over it. I mean handcuffs. Well, yeah, do Google. I'd love to. I mean, you can prove me wrong. I'm not upset to be proven wrong. My understanding is, like, when you're driving and they pull you over. Now, okay, so I've gone through a couple in my life, just two or three, where they blocked off all the sort of road and are doing a sobriety check, and they have you roll down the window and they, how are you or whatever, and make you respond to something, but they can't ask you for your ID, And now if they look at you and they you know, by the way you respond or something, they think you're drunk. Well, that's another question. But but most of the time they cannot, at least out here in California, they cannot pull you over unless they can articulate a crime, like a broken tail light, driving too fast, failing to signal, a turn, come to just a rolling stop at a stop sign, not a full stop. I mean, they have to be able to say, I pulled you over for X. And since you're actively driving the vehicle, you have to show your IDs. Now, nobody else in the vehicle has to show IDs because they're all just sitting in the vehicle. They're just passengers. And unless it's like, I don't know, somebody was throwing rocks out of the car or some passenger doing something crazy, that would be a different matter. But just simply being in the car, you don't have to show ID. You're not driving. You're not suspected of a crime. I mean, they can ask, but you can refuse. I mean, they always ask you for an ID, but you just go, nope, no, thank you, sir. And because you don't want to be written up for too many police interactions, because that just gets computerized. Every time they go in, they go file reports. And if you're one of the person, you start getting a list of how many times you've been stopped by law enforcement and what was the occasion that you were being written up for. Just could be a witness. This is, person's ID who is a witness or something. But yeah, accumulatively, it could be pretty bad overall. And so, yeah. And pulled over, you're asked registrations and insurance first. It seems driving 100% ID. Yeah, need, because you're operating a motor vehicles on the public street. So that's not ID. You don't need an ID. You need a driver's license, which functions as an ID. Walking around with an ID is a probable cause. Probable cause of what? Oh, you need probable cause to check for ID. Yes, that's what I'm saying. Is you need something like selling cigarettes, a probable cause of a crime, to ask for ID for walking around, and then you could fight on whether you're required to have it. I know for sure at the edge of every highway it says by use permit of the governor only. Right. Yeah, there's definitely, because it's perfectly legitimate to go, do you have a license to drive on the public streets? Because that's what you're driving. It's not that you're driving on the public street. So you're interacting with other people. And so you want that. And so if you are stopped for reasons and have no ID, cops get discretion. Okay, yeah, and that should, if you're stopped for a reason, like they think you pickpocketed somebody, or they think, you're running crazily down the street, and maybe you're running away from robbing somebody, and they stop you. Okay, well, you can articulate a reason, and then they got to see your ID, and then if you don't have your ID, now that you have a reason that you may have committed a crime, and they can't ID you. And so yeah, but if they can't articulate a reason, then you don't have to show ID, is my understanding. But I know that, like I say, you don't want to have a huge number of interactions with law enforcement write-ups, because that can color things, if you will, because that is, at least out here, that's all computerized. Um, I know some of this because I used to work for years as a bouncer and did have a fair number of never arrested in my whole life, um, but a fairly large number of interactions with the police as being at an event because bouncers are there and things happen at clubs and reports get arrested. Had bouncers that I worked with get arrested, I mean that I was there that night, get arrested. um all the ones that I can think of, there were they normally weren't charged, never needing to go to court. They just went through the sort of the process, and no charges were actually brought. Um, so yes, and so I'm because trust me, when and there have been occasions, speeding tickets and that kind of thing. Um, and I'm not sure all of the details, and it's changed. Um, the police sort of know who I am, if meaning sort of in that kind of thing, because of my heavy firearms involvement. Because out here in California, there is something known as a licensed firearm instructor. I've been that. I've worked I've had my own firearms licensed business at one time, a small business. Worked for a couple of larger companies that were involved out here in firearms. So have registered assault weapons, which are registered, in which you type in my name, they come up as an owner of assault weapons. So yeah, I'm well known, involved in firearms and the firearms industry out here. So um, it's and in the past I've held a security clearance briefly. Oh well, I mean briefly was working for an agency that I had a security clearance. So yeah, I'm in the system, heavily in the system. But yes. Yeah. Oh well. Yeah. I was very lucrative out here in Orange County, um, and so yeah, it's bouncing's interesting, and it's sort of it's in a gray area. So long as we were on our property, that we were and didn't follow people out into the street, we were pretty much left alone by the police as um, being any sort of physical charge, assault or whatever. Um, in the fights and whatnot, and so very much stayed on the property. Tried to, if someone was pissing us off, tried to get them to come back at us, but never going out into the thing. I was sure you were a time traveler. Well, might have done that too, but that's a different matter. Yeah, so yeah, no, I've done that. So I've had a lot, like I say, I've had a lot of police and interactions and involvements over the years, but nothing as being the criminal. Oh, sure, like I say, driving too fast or whatever. Yes, um, but so I've gotten my share of tickets, but that's as far as that goes for me. But yeah, and like the write ups and whatnot can affect my other sort of stuff. Ah, thank you. Peer character stretching his arm forward. Ah, oh yes, peer. Thank you for this super sticker. $3. Thank you so much, Admiral Teague. More than kind. More than kind. I do this as a hobby, but yes, thank you so much. Yeah, that's cool. All right. Well, this is therapy for me. I get to talk to people about all kinds of things in my mind while playing games. I can't hardly think of a better, more fun thing to do. Okay, let's look at reinforcements. And I've got to know very interesting people from all over the world that I would not have gotten to know otherwise. But I'm really glad. I mean, I always like more Americans viewers on this channel, but I'm really glad that I've gotten so many people from literally all over the place. Like Arno's from the Netherlands, and just people from everywhere. Well, thank you, Admiralty. Yeah, that was also sort of therapy. Yeah, things are going to be changing. Things are going to be changing. Okay. More British. More French. I think we need them down here more. All right. All right. Now, yes, that hex is entrenched. So what we're going to do is these two out here. Going to be interesting. Then again, this has been an interesting century so far. Yeah. Um. I think it's going to get very interesting this next 20 years. I think reality's coming up and smacking a bunch of people in the face right now. Schlieffen plan too many moving parts to ever work, or did it come close enough to prove viable? Yeah. Okay. The first presumption that the Schlieffen plan had was, and I'm not an expert on it, but I know some basic stuff. Was that the Belgians were going to allow the Germans to come through, not to significantly resist, because there had been a very serious tradition in Europe of allowing armies through that were big enough to sort of push their way through without declaring war. And so that I think there was a lot of presumption within the Schlieffen plan that they would be able to move through Belgium, with Belgium just sort of going, shrugging the shoulders, whatever, with the idea that not that Germany was conquering anything, but was just simply moving through. You can see this very much in the 18th century, somewhat in the 19th century. It is only slowly coming to the idea that you just can't march through a neutral's nation to go fight some other nation. Nowadays, you would not presume to move through a neutral nation just because it's there, and have the people, locally just sort of shrug their shoulders, the army or whatever locally shrug their shoulders and let you drive on through. So that was the first thing. The Germans had a policy, because of the Franco-Prussian War, a very strong policy against the idea of whether you want to call them civilians or non-uniformed personnel shooting at their people, basically guerrillas or whatever you want to call them, and go very harsh, including going not after just the people that were doing it, but other nearby people and stringing them up, because the French had been doing a lot of that in the Franco-Prussian War. They expected it again with France. France does not do it of any significant amount. But the Belgians had a reserve system that didn't necessarily have everyone having full uniforms at home. Up until World War I, there was a huge sort of industry, if you will, promoted by the government of privately owning military weapons, rifles, and shooting competitions. Shooting competitions were a very big thing, both in Belgium and Switzerland. And it was to create, and encourage people to, train to shoot, not just like hunt, but target shoot. And so there were lots of people that had military type rifles. Now, this is very unlike modern day Europe, except for Switzerland, that people would just have a military rifle in their home and some rounds, and that they would be, in theory, part of the reserve system, but they might not have the full uniform kit. And when Germany's rolling through very fast, they don't necessarily running off to the depot and getting all kitted out with whatever the uniform is, and then getting back to whatever's happening, because Germans are coming very fast for their time period. When you think they're out here at Liège, nope, they're already up here, and so the reaction time, and so the Germans are hanging Belgians left and right, and the Belgian population is just getting incensed by this, because it's not that, because they'd take them prisoner and then they'd hang them. And the Belgians were just saying, well, we were just defending our country. We're part of the defensive system here, and now you're hanging us. We surrendered under what we thought were the standard rules of war. We were going to be put in a prisoner of war camp until the war was over. And so those not just rumors but facts start flying around that they're doing it. And the Germans are very much promoting that they're doing this because they're trying to discourage others from doing it, because it's a discouragement, at least in their minds, as much as it is a punishment. But that's only just incensing the Belgians. so that there's a lot more resistance going through Belgium, which also comes down to the resistance on the railways and how effective the Germans are able to use the Belgian railways to keep going. And Schlieffen, very much, because as you're looking at from the German perspective up here, this is the right flank. This is the left flank. He always wants to keep the right flank very strong as it moves around. Well, my understanding what happens is it looks like, and there's the Miracle on the Marne, it looks like the French basically break down in here, and they start to push straight for Paris. And they actually get fairly damn close. And there's and it is partially the taxi cabs, but it's just sort of and this is the Miracle on the Marne, that they push up a bunch of reservists out of Paris and stop the German push. And then the Germans heavily have to fall back. Well, the idea is that they're trying to close, with the Schlieffen plan, they're trying to close the bag on it and surround this army. I think it's as much the army as it is, or the expected army, as it is the city of Paris itself. And so you get that pushed, and by weakening the right flank, not keeping it as strong as it should to push straight in, you're no longer allowing them to come in and hook around. It's they were sort of trying to kind of do a Zulu Impi attack, if you know about it, in that the you would have 4 sections to your army. You would have a left, a center, and a right, and a reserve. The idea would be that the enemy would come, and they would allow the center to fall back, and that's what the reserve could go out there. And then the horns, describing the horns of the buffalo, would then come around your enemy and surround it and kill it. Well, that's the idea, that if you're coming around behind your enemy, and your army is here, you're coming around behind your enemy, you're cutting off from resupply. And don't think food is the issue; it's ammunition is the primary. And you're coming around and you're putting them into a cauldron. But by pushing up, by seeing a weakness and pushing up towards Paris through it, you no longer can surround your enemy, and so that gets pushed off. So part of it is they don't follow the Schlieffen plan as well as they should have. So that's another issue. There is, I don't know that it's moving parts, but I do think to a degree it is, well, it is very ambitious, and I think it's probably just too ambitious for the size and scale of what's going on between the two sides and the technology of the day, because we do not have any military motorization at all. I mean, they're using civilian for the French coming up here. So it is purely rail lines. And rail lines are, you're railroaded. I mean, metaphorically and physically and whatever, it's a railroading. And so when that doesn't work, you can't just easily flow and take alternate routes. So you're still, outside of the railroads, you're still moving at the same speed of a Napoleonic army. And you've got to be able to move fast enough to defeat France before it can mobilize. Because not on this map, but you're mobilizing units in the south of France and putting them on trains and getting them to, regions up here. You're trying to mobilize from everywhere in France, and you've got to crush what's here before the rest can mobilize. And that is the whole principle and why World War I happens. The Austrians are going, I want to, the real blame for World War I is Serbia and killing the Archduke Ferdinand. I don't ever, the bad guys won in World War I. The bad guys, Serbians, they won. Then it's not people of Serbia, but it's the damn bastard government of Serbia assassinates, through the Black Hand people, but they set it up, assassinates in essence, the vice president, the heir apparent to Austro-Hungary. And yeah, you do that, you're gonna be invaded in these times and days, this stuff. But Russia comes in and goes, hey, Serbia's our ally, don't you do that. And Germany is now stuck in the idea that if it's going to uphold its now defensive alliance with Austria, fine, but it needs to mobilize and get there before the enemy can mobilize to assure victory. So you don't have the time, it's a tick-tock of time. And you got to start that clock going, and you don't have any sort of delays. And that's why it spreads as rapidly as it does, because Russia's mobilizing, and we were talking about it the other day, but Wilhelm is trying to keep the war from spreading, Kaiser Wilhelm, but he sort of gets bamboozled by his army, and he acquiesces to the whole thing. And so, yeah, the French, just exterior lines of communication coming around here, interior lines of communication, meaning central hub of Paris. So long as the French hold Paris, they hold interior lines of communication, and with the railway, they're able to maneuver around more effectively. And they can't get through it soon enough. This is a disaster for them. So yeah, let's get back to what maybe they had to charge as a treaty that would hold up between Belgium, UK, and France. Okay, well, yeah, there was a defensive arrangement. Belgium is a creation of Britain. Okay, I mean, it just was. Pretty sure the Belgians opened the dikes to the sea and allowed a lot of their country to be flooded. Oh, I think you're thinking of the Netherlands, because there really isn't a lot of flooding. Belgium isn't that low to the sea. I'm not saying up here it didn't happen, but and now they may have done a little bit, but it's really, I think you're thinking of the Netherlands, but which did not get into this war. Belgium was created by the British. It was, I don't know if British puppet is the right term, but Belgium never existed as a country until it was created in what was it, 1814, 1813, 1814. And so it was created by Britain, because prior to that, it had either been, basically it had been either the Spanish Netherlands or the Habsburg or the Austrian Netherlands under the Habsburgs. Wherever the Habsburgs were ruling, it was Habsburg provinces. And then revolutionary France takes it over, and it's basically incorporated into France during the Revolutionary period and Napoleonic period. And when Napoleon is deposed, Belgium is created as a nation, as a British creation to sort of create a buffer state in Europe between the various big powers. And so Belgium is a weird country because of that. And so their history as a nation just goes back to the beginning of the 19th century. and Britain is always very, very concerned about what's going on in Belgium because of the power plays. And that is a major reason that Britain gets involved, is because Belgium is now in the war. They probably would have gotten involved even if Belgium didn't get in the war, but that's up to more questions. Dutch and British unite a couple of times through marriages regime. Yeah, of course they did. And that's why, when William of Orange marries his cousin, Mary, the daughter of the King of England, they're already cousins because he's already descended from an earlier King of England as well. So, yeah, both William and Mary. That's where you get like William and Mary College here in the United States, is during actually the colonial period. Yeah, they're both claimants to one's father and the other's uncle's throne of Britain. They formed and consider it odd. Well, it's Belgium is established, I believe, before that. It's what, Austria and Britain are the real sort of players that set up post-Napoleonic Europe. And I say that because of Metternich, who was the Austrian statesman, and the British are redrawing maps. They don't want France too big, too powerful, so they don't want Germany too big or too powerful. Austria doesn't, Britain doesn't. So they set up places, various, Kingdom of Bavaria and Hanover and whatnot, and Prussia in Germany, set up Belgium to take some territory, industrial territory, away from the French, to keep France from being too big, and creating a bunch of small states. Now, Bismarck upturns a lot of this in creating the German Empire in the 1870s. At the end of that. So yes, Arno is chiming in. It was a plan by the Dutch in case they were involved in World War I, or if they attacked World War II. Yes, the flooding. Yep, Nassau County, New York, is one half of... Yes. Now, with... well, you have... See, now there you have... I think Nassau County comes in when the Dutch controlled New York, or New Amsterdam at the time. Because, again, remember my title, 1745. It's involved with the various royal civil wars, if you will, in Britain. But you had very interesting in the 17th century, the 1600s, very interesting sort of political dynamics in which you have the Dutch and the English fighting it out. Let's see, use this map. The Dutch come up here a bit further here until they get turned back. You have he who becomes James the Second of Great Britain at the time, the Prince of Wales or whatever. He comes in with the British Navy and takes out New Amsterdam from the Dutch. He is basically the the guy in charge. I don't know if it was quite titled the Lord High Admiral or whatever, but he was the guy running the British Navy, the brother of the king of King Charles II. He's running the English Navy and does it very well, and he picks up um, Manhattan. That's where we get all these Dutch names, but they are related to the House of Orange as well. But they're also related to the House of Bourbon of France as well. And so they're sometimes in alliance with the Dutch and sometimes fighting the Dutch, sometimes in alliance with the French, more often fighting the French. And so yeah, that it gets sort of an interest an intricate weave of familial relationships and wars there. Yeah, some towns on the island have Dutch names. Absolutely. Brooklyn, Harlem. Oh yes. Um, yeah, New York's on its third country by some measures. Oh yeah, no, it's because obviously yes, it was Manhattan was you know a Dutch colony, then taken over by the English, British, however you want to say that, and then of course independent, um, independent United States. However you want to again say become parts of the United States. So yes, okay, we will move these guys up. These guys up. We'll see if they come back and occupy that hex. Now here we maybe should move some more air power. Okay, have you struck? You have not. Okay, let's. This is how you grind through. Effect, but it's very manpower intensive. Okay, now that's yes, and we have so we come up and entrench so that if we're counterattacked, we have a reasonably good chance of withstanding that attack. Time the British showed up to take it, Manhattan and the area was semi-autonomous colony. There's no battle. Yeah, yeah. I don't know the details of it, but oh boy, I don't. Somewhere I have a book dealing with James as admiral of the British fleet. Um, and he's sailing also around the Caribbean and whatnot too during some of that. Um, I don't know that there was any. He shows up with a pretty big fleet, so it's sort of maybe to a point like why no point in fighting it as in very large forces that you aren't going to win anyways. So, and they're hell, they're on the other side of the world at that point, from everything else. And the Dutch have no strategic depth in the colonies at the time. They have no ability to retreat back. It's coastal settlements really. There's no like, oh yeah, we'll fall back inland to some other place. There just wasn't anything like that. One party is Dutch East India Company, the other is the British Navy, and they're so close to being the same thing. They just cut a deal. Yeah, East India, Dutch East India. Okay. Okay, so what we're doing is we're pushing up here to off-put the AI, meaning to hopefully get them to think that they need to move forces up this way. You know, they all over the Hudson Valley. Yeah, I know the basics of the geography. I just don't know how much was developed at the time. I've read a bunch about what I call, and because of reading English stuff, and I think it's actually more correct, the American War of Independence. That's sort of what all the English authors call it, and I see it much more as a war of independence than a revolution. You know, so that's just my it's my take on it. It wasn't a revolution. It was just, hey, we're fighting for independence. Well, yeah, yes, and good and fine, but not that that's a negative thing. It's more of a war of independence than a revolution in my mind. But I've read a lot about the campaigns, both in the North and the South during that period. So I know now that's about 100 years later. It was really really interesting. Hey, David, how you doing? Or Strong Arm. It was really interesting. I was my first trip to Europe. Was a package tour, but it was a package tour that was with an English company, but traveling around Europe. So I was one of the few Americans, but there were a bunch of Australians, and this was back a number of years ago now, and it was the bicentennial of Australia. And they're 200 years old now. I'm going, huh? 200 years old? Wow. Well, they celebrate their nation by their first colonial establishment, not by independence. Where we were around in the Americas for over 200 years prior to independence. And so we were, I was, back in 88. And so they looked at, they were, so it was their bicentennial. And I was like, what? You haven't been independent. No, that's since we were founded. Oh, well then, America is 400 and however many years. I 1600 something, or what is Jamestown founded? Which is before the Pilgrims get it to Plymouth. Jamestown is founded. So America is rather old if you go from founding. It's much older. If they wanted, they could have caused trouble for years, but I think there was pragmatic. Well, okay. Well, it's complicated. The Dutch were the enemies. The Dutch were the allies. The Dutch were the enemies. The Dutch were the Dutch were the enemies of the British royal family, basically during the English Civil War, mid 1600s. They're supplying the Roundheads. When they lose the Jacobites, flee to France, Catholic France, and they have mostly Irish, but they're also a lot of Englishmen and Scotsmen, and a army of exile. And he who will become King Charles II his father's already been executed, is in exile in France. France recognizes Cromwell, so Prince Charles, King Charles, however you want to call him, and his army have to leave France, so they go into Dutch service and fight against the French. And so they're in the Netherlands until Cromwell dies and his son is trying to become the next dictator of Britain, and General Monk, one of Cromwell's generals, marches down from Scotland and takes London and invites the king back, realizing that the Cromwell dynasty is not going to be a good thing. The Puritans have run Britain very, very badly, and it was just Cromwell and his army, partially Monk, but it was keeping, a dictatorship, keeping the lid on the situation and knowing that this ain't going to last. So they invite Charles back. Charles comes back, now in alliance with the French, goes to war with the Dutch. And they're fighting over various things. The Dutch are coming up and attacking up the Thames River and other stuff. There's a big bunch of fighting there, so they're now fighting the Dutch. That settles down. Then, and so they're in a pseudo-alliance with France. Then Charles II dies. His brother becomes king. His brother is an open Catholic. Things are going to be okay because both of his daughters, one of them married to William of Orange, are both Protestants from his first marriage. Oh, he now has a Catholic son with his second marriage. So now William, in 1688, invades Britain with the Dutch army to depose the Catholic monarch. So that then, and most of the army deserts to William in Britain. But there is both a Scottish and an Irish Jacobite risings, and that's when you get the various, like the Battle of the Boyne and a lot of the famous Irish battles are being fought out in Ireland. And they're fighting the Dutch there. So yeah, during this whole time period, it's a sometimes an alliance, sometimes at brutal war with the Dutch. Then once William becomes King of England, obviously now you have the leader of the Dutch and the leader of the English being, well, he's King of England, so his wife is also queen. It's a dual monarchy, though she dies. And he stays on, lives longer. But it's sort of a dual monarchy. But so the same leader is the leader of the Netherlands and the leader of England. And this is after 1689 going on until Anne comes in. I think that Anne, which is James's other daughter, who has been Queen of Denmark, has a bunch of children, but none survive to adulthood with King George or whatever his name is of Denmark. But she then, upon the death of William, comes back to England and rules as Queen of England. So, and there's still something of there. Then there's it's a continuing Anglo-Dutch alliance because, depending on the date, but Queen Anne's father, James II, is still in France with an exiled, mostly Irish, that's where you get the wild geese, army that's ready to invade Britain to return the Stuarts to power. So it's an Anglo-Dutch alliance against there. So you're looking at a lot of okay, thanks, 1607, right? So yeah, so you're going oh yes, Botany Bay, and of course you get also the Star Trek references there with you know, Khan, Nomi, and Singh and whatnot. Uh, but yeah, so yeah, there's a lot of dynastic stuff, and I've just shortened it, truncated all of the stuff going on, and that very brief telling of about 100 years of political alliances between the Dutch and the English that were going on. So yeah, so um, the close alliance that a lot of Americans would think of about it are more in the Williamite era, after 1689. So yeah, America's been around, as a founding of a colony since 1607. So America isn't that new of a place. You know, it's not obviously it's not. It ain't the city of Rome, but it's, and notice I said city of Rome and not Italy. Italy is a much newer creation than the United States as the idea of a nation in any sort of modern sense. Now, the city of Rome or the city of Venice, they're ancient, very ancient. Rome obviously is much, much older than Venice, and so various city states and whatnot in Italy are very old, but as a nation, as a political or cultural entity, Italy is much newer than the United States. All right. Well, there very well may be a few units in here that in the fog of war zone, but we can definitely tell there is currently no major push through shall we say, the plains of Belgium. And it's Waterloo is sort of in this area here, if I'm not mistaken. Now down here, which those who study World War II with the Ardennes Forest, the Battle of Bulge. Okay, this is the rough terrain of Belgium down in the south. Um, and there isn't really that suitable other than through here path to push. So it looks to me that the AI has decided to push here. Oh, that's an interesting thing. Means I still can't strategically redeploy forces, but I don't know if I want to move my cavalry that far south, but I don't need to push in here. I think we are going to continue our push here in the north. So, let's come here and entrench using my sort of passive aggressive. is what I'm making sure of here is that I've got supply lines coming around here with the rails, and we can see supplies. Currently, these guys are out of supply, but next turn they will be in supply. And that will be in supply all the way down through to there, so I think we can move forward to there. And that's cutting off this guy's rail links, maybe not all supply, but cutting that off. We're spotting there. So now we can move up to here and entrench. Yes, entrenching, I think, with this game and also the realities of the time and the warfare at the time. Okay, yeah, you can move into here. Like I said, I suspected there was somebody in that town. Okay. Move up some air power. Move up the horses. When we really think we got a chance to push, we can push deep. Move up the Belgians. Now let's in remote. Okay, so we're limited. We have here, but they're holding Namur here for in a fortified, city fortress kind of thing. And so to get supply to push into here, we need to take this. So it's these positions here. Now we can, I think, yeah, we can push up a bit and still stay in supply. Yeah, okay. That we need to move to here. Take that. There we go. And that will allow us to move it like this. Reinforce all these for next turn. Be ready to push. Okay, so we take those and we can push deeper that way. Here, I don't know what they're wandering around out there for. Yeah, those are all looking pretty stable there. Don't think there's anything we can currently get. Yeah, so we need to move these guys up. These guys get on boats. There we go, some reinforcements coming. Okay, good. They decided to attack. Which, yeah, it hurt us a bit, but it's them that are going to exhaust themselves. All right. All right. Well, that is an inconvenience, but it's also, you can see he's very vulnerable. He's cut this rail link, but who cares? We got 2 other rail links. But since he is looking to be easy to take down, we will swap these out with here, and he can come here. Okay, so that, and he's going to come here, so that'll be it. Oh, this is going to be easy. Oh, he didn't even need to move. He could have stayed right where he was. There we go. So taking out a unit there is good. Now here, we want to start up here. That's not looking good. It's going to be another bit of a grind. I think we can do it. Take the unit out, that is. Oh, we can. Okay, well that wasn't what I wanted to have happen. The unit is still alive. Push back, yes, but still alive. These guys can come up and trench. Oh, we should have used, well, yeah. Okay, from the north, what can we use? Oh. No, we can't occupy that trench and entrench. But that's all right. If they want, they can move forward on it. Now here, let's move up and entrench. Swap these, that way I can still reinforce. Yeah, that's... Now we have them at least cut off this way. Still with enough supply. But either way, I want to get out there. There we go. So now he's cut off. He can fight his way out, obviously, or someone can push their way in. But that will be a significant endeavor to do that still. There we go. Take this down before pushing out there any further. But let's move some units. This turn. Now we can. All right, let's see what the reaction is by the AI. Well, there's its big artillery. Been wasting it there. Hey Arno, there's a bug over on Twitch, or not bug, a bot over on Twitch. Okay, well, so far my pushing is doing very good. Now we can see that this here is going to fall soon. But that's going to have to wait for next weekend. I want to thank BeamSlam. I'm the bugger, not the bug. Yeah, BeamSlam. I want to thank BeamSlam, Admiral T, Strong Armor, David Fletching, however he wants to be called. And Arno, of course. Who else has been here? Scrolling back up. Not a lot of people I know, but Albert's left, but thank you for hanging out with me. I'll be back tomorrow with some War Thunder. You guys are all invited to join me in playing. If we get and NMDB, yes, you were here too. Thank you so much. You're all invited to play with me if you want. We can either get a big enough battle or swap out, or you guys just hang out and watch. Either way. So hopefully to see you tomorrow. So thanks everyone. Have a good day.